Chapter 4. A month later to the night, Antimodes was comfortably ensconced in the elegant chambers of Parsalian of the White Robes, head of the conclave of wizards. The two men were very different, and probably would not have been friends under ordinary circumstances. Both were about the same age, in their 50s. Antimodes was a man of the world, however. Parsalian was a man of books. Antimodes liked to travel, he had a head for business. He was fond of good ale, pretty women, comfortable inns. He was nosy and inquisitive, fussy in his dress and habits. Parsalian was a scholar, whose knowledge of the art of magic was undeniably the most extensive of any wizard then living upon Krynn. He abhorred travel, had little use for other people, and was known to have loved only one woman, a misguided affair that he regretted to this day. He took little care of his personal appearance or physical comfort. If absorbed in his studies, he often forgot to come to meals. It was the responsibility of some of the apprentice magic users to see to it that the master took sustenance, which they did by surreptitiously sliding a loaf of bread beneath his arm as he read. He would then absent-mindedly munch on it. The apprentices often joked among themselves that they could have substituted a loaf of sawdust for the bread, and Parsalian would have never known the difference. They held him in such awe and reverence, however, that none dared try the experiment. This night Parsalian was entertaining his old friend, and therefore he had left poring over his books, though not without a pang of regret. Antimodes had brought as a gift several scrolls of dark magic, which the Archmage had acquired by chance on his travels. One of their black-robed sisters, an evil wizardess, had been slain by a mob. Antimodes had arrived too late to save the wizardess, which he would have at least made a half-hearted attempt to do. All mages being bound together by their magic, no matter to which god or goddess they pledged their allegiance. He was, however, able to persuade the townspeople, a set of superstitious louts, to allow him to remove the wizardess's personal effects before the mob set fire to our house. Antimodes had brought the scrolls to his friend Parsalian. Antimodes had kept for himself an amulet of summoning undead spirits. He could not and would not have used the amulet. The undead were a smelly, disgusting lot, as far as he was concerned, but he intended to offer it in trade to some of his black-robed brethren in the tower. Despite the fact that Parsalian was of the White Robes, completely dedicated to the gods Solinari, he was able to read and understand the scrolls of the evil wizardess, though at some pain to himself. He was one of the very few wizards who ever had the power to cross allegiances. He would never make use of them, but he could take note of the words used to perform the spell, the effects of the spell, the components needed to cast it, the spell's duration, and any other interesting information he came across. His research would be recorded in the annals of the Tower of Wayrith. The scrolls themselves would then be deposited in the tower's library with an assigned valuation. "A terrible way to die," said Parsalian, pouring his guest a glass of elven wine nicely chilled and sweet, with just a hint of woodbine, which reminded the drinker of green forests and sunlit glens. "Did you know her?"
"Esmilla? No."
Antimodes shook his head.
"And you could say that she asked for it." The mundane will overlook the snatching of a child or two, but start pressing bad coins, and they...
Oh, come now, my dear Antimodes.
Pa Salian looked shocked. He was not noted for his sense of humor.
You're joking, I think.
Well, perhaps I am.
Antimodes grinned and sipped his wine.
I see what you mean.
Pa Salian struck the arm of his high-backed wooden chair in impatience.
Why do these fool mages insist on wasting their skills and talents in order to produce a few poor-quality coins, which every shopkeeper between here and the Minotaur Islands can tell are magic? It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Antimodes agreed.
Considering the effort one expends on producing only 2 or 3 silver coins, a mage could do manual labor for less effort and make far more. If our sister had continued to sell her services to rid the town of rats, as she had been doing for years, she would no doubt have been left in peace. As it was, the magically created coins threw everyone into a panic. First, most people believed that they were cursed and were terrified to touch them. Those who didn't think the money was cursed feared that she was about to start minting coins at a rate to rival the Lord of Palanthus, and would soon own the town and everything in it.
It is precisely for this reason that we have established rules about the reproduction of coins of the realm,
said Pa Salian.
Every young mage tries it once. I did. I'm sure you probably did yourself.
Antimodes nodded and shrugged.
But most of us learn that it simply isn't worth the time and effort, not to mention the serious impact we could have on Antelon's various economies. This woman was certainly old enough to know better. What was she thinking?
Who knows? Gone a bit daft, maybe, or just greedy. She angered her god, however. Nunatari abandoned her to her fate. Whatever defensive spells she tried to cast fizzled.
He is not one to permit the frivolous use of his gifts,
said Pa Salian in stern and solemn tones. Antimodes shifted his chair a bit nearer the fire that crackled on the hearth. He always felt extremely close to the gods of magic when visiting the Tower of High Sorcery, close to all the gods of magic, the light, the gray, and the dark. This closeness was uncomfortable, as if someone was always breathing down the back of his neck, and was the main reason Antimodes did not live in the tower, but chose to reside in the outside world. No matter how dangerous it might be for magic users, he was glad to change the subject.
Speaking of children,
Antimodes began.
Were we?
Pa Salian asked, smiling.
Of course, I said something about snatching children.
Ah, yes, I remember. Very well, then we were speaking of children. What have you to say about them? I thought you didn't like them.
I don't, as a rule, but I met a rather interesting youngster on my trip here. He's one to take note of, I think. In fact, I believe 3 already have.
Antimodes glanced outside the window toward the night sky, where shone 2 of the 3 moons sacred to the gods of magic. He nodded his head knowingly. Pa Salian appeared interested.
The child has innate gifts. Did you test him? How old is he?
About 6, and no, I was staying at the inn in Solace. It wasn't the time or the place, and I've never put much stock in those silly tests anyway. Any clever child could pass them. No, it was the boy. What he had to say, and how he said it, that impressed me. Scared me, too, I don't mind telling you. There's more than a bit of cold-blooded ambition in that boy. Frightening in one so young. Of course, that could come from his background. The family is not well off.
What did you do with him?
Enrolled him with Master Theobald. Yes, I know. Theobald is not the Conclave's greatest teacher. He's plotting and unimaginative, prejudiced and old-fashioned, but the boy will get a good solid grounding in the basics and strict discipline, which won't hurt him. He's been running wild, I gather, raised by an older half-sister who is something special in her own right.
Theobald is expensive, said Pa Salian.
I paid for his first semester.
Antimodes waved away any acknowledgment that he'd done something laudable.
The family must never know, mind you. I made up some tale about the tower having established funds for deserving students.
Not a bad idea,
said Pa Salian thoughtfully.
and one we might well put into practice, especially now that we're seeing some of the unreasoning prejudice against our kind starting to die off. Unfortunately, fools like Esmilla keep putting us in a bad light. Still, I believe that people are in general more tolerant. They're starting to appreciate what we do for them. You travel abroad openly and safely, my friend, and you could not have done so 40 years ago.
True,
Antimodes admitted,
although I believe that in general the world is altogether a darker place these days. I ran into a new religious order in Haven. They worship a god known as Belzor, and it sounds very much to me as if they're planning on cooking and serving up that same old tripe we heard from the king priest of Istar before the gods, bless their hearts, dropped a mountain on him.
Indeed. You must tell me about it.
Pa Salian settled back more comfortably in his chair. Taking a leather-bound book from the table at his side, he opened it to a blank page, dated it, and prepared to write. They were about to get down to the important business of the evening. The main part of Antimode's job was to report on the political situation on the continent of Ansalon, which, as was nearly always the case, was done up in a confused and tangled knot. This included the new religious order, which was discussed and summarily dismissed.
A charismatic leader out of Haven.
Antimodes reported.
He has only a few followers and promises the usual assortment of miracles, including healing. I didn't get a chance to see him, but from what I heard, he is probably a rather highly skilled illusionist with some practical knowledge of herb lore. He's not doing anything in the way of healing that the Druids haven't been practicing for years, but it's all new to the people of Abyssinia. Someday we may have to expose him, but he's not doing any harm at the moment and is in fact doing some good. I'd recommend that we do not start trouble. It would look very bad for us. Public sympathy would be...
I quite agree.
Pa Salian nodded and made a brief note in his book.
What about the elves? Did you go through Qualinesti?
Only the outskirts. They were polite, but they wouldn't permit me to go farther. Nothing's changed with them in the last 500 years, and provided the rest of the world leaves them alone, nothing will change. As for the Sylvanesti, they are, as far as we know, hiding out in their magical woods under the leadership of Lorak. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, however.
Antimodes added, pouring himself another glass of elven wine. The topic had reminded him of the excellence of its taste.
You must have had a chance to talk to some of their mages.
Pa Salian shook his head.
They came to the tower this winter, but only on business, and then they were close-lipped and spoke to us humans only when absolutely necessary. They would not share the magic with us, though they were quite happy to use ours.
Do they have anything we would want?
Antimodes asked with a faintly amused smile.
So far as scroll work, no,
Parsalian replied.
it is shocking how stagnant the Sylvanesti have become. Not surprising, considering their terrible distrust and fear of change of any sort. The only creative mind they have among them belongs to a young mage known as Dalamar, and I'm certain that as soon as they discover what he's been dabbling in, they'll throw him out on his pointed ear. As to their top white robes, they were quite eager to obtain some of the new work being done on evocation spells, particularly those of a defensive nature. They wanted to pay in gold, which is worthless these days. I had to be quite firm and insist on either hard steel, which of course they don't have, or barter. Then they wanted to palm off on me some old moldy magical spells that were considered old-fashioned in my father's day. In the end, I agreed to trade for spell components. They grow some quite lovely and unusual plants in Sylvanesti, and their jewelry is quite exquisite. They traded and left, and I haven't seen them since. I wonder if they're not facing some threat in Sylvanesti, or if they've divined that some threat is approaching. Their king Lorak is a powerful mage and something of a seer.
If they are, we'll never know about it.
Antimodes said.
They would rather see their people wiped out before they would lower themselves to ask any of us for help.
He sniffed. He hadn't any use at all for the Sylvanesti, whose white-robed wizards were part of the conclave of wizards, but who made it clear that they considered this a tremendous condescension on their part. They did not like humans and indicated their dislike in various ways, such as pretending they could not speak Common, the language of all races on Kryn, or turning away in contempt when any human dared to desecrate the elven language by speaking it. Incredibly long-lived, the elves saw change as something to be feared. The humans, with their shorter lifespans, more frenetic lives, and constant need to improve, represented everything the elves abhorred. The Sylvanesti elves hadn't a creative idea in their heads in the last 2,000 years.
The Qualinesti elves, on the other hand, keep a close watch on their borders, but they do permit people of other races to enter, provided they have permission from the Speaker of the Sun and Stars.
Antimodes went on.
Dwarven and human metalsmiths are highly regarded and encouraged to visit, though not to stay, and their own elven artisans do occasionally travel to other lands. Unfortunately, they frequently meet with much prejudice and hatred.
Antimodes knew and liked many of the Qualinesti, and was sorry to see them misused.
Several of their young people, particularly the eldest son of the Speaker, what's his name?
The speaker, Solosteren?
No, the eldest son.
Ah, you must mean Porthios.
Yes, Porthios. He's said to be thinking that the Sylvanesti have the right idea and that no human should enter Qualinesti land.
You can't really blame him, considering the terrible things that happened when the humans entered Qualinesti land after the cataclysm. But I don't think we need worry. They'll bicker over this for the next century unless something pushes them one way or the other.
Indeed.
Antimodes had noted a subtle change in Parsalian's voice.
You think something is likely to push them?
I've heard rumblings,
said Parsalian.
distant thunder.
I haven't heard thunder,
Antimodes said.
The few black robes I meet these days are a little too smooth. They act as if bat guano wouldn't ignite in their hands.
A few of the more powerful have quietly dropped out of sight,
said Parsalian.
Who's that?
Well, Drakkar, for one. He used to stop by on a regular basis to see what new artifacts had come in, and to check in on possible apprentices. But the only wizards of the Black Robe who have come by lately have been those of low ranking, who wouldn't be invited to share the secrets of their elders, and even they seem a bit edgy.
I take it. Then you have not seen the fair Ladonna.
Antimodes said with a sly wink. Parsalian smiled faintly and shrugged. That fire had died years ago, and he was too old and too absorbed in his work to be either pleased or annoyed by his friend's teasing.
No, I have not spoken to Ladonna this past year, and what is more, I believe that whatever she is doing, she is deliberately hiding it from me. She refused to attend a meeting of the heads of the orders, something which she's never done before. She sent a representative in her name, a man who said exactly 3 words the entire time, and those were past the salt.
Parsalian shook his head.
Queen Taxis has been quiet too long. Something's up.
All we can do is watch and wait, my friend, and be prepared to act when necessary.
Antimodes paused, sipped his elven wine.
One bit of good news I have is that Solamnic Knights are finally beginning to pull themselves together. Many have reclaimed their family estates and are rebuilding their holdings. Their new leader, Lord Gunther, is a keen politician who has the ability to think with his head, not his helmet. He's endeared himself to the local populace by cleaning out a few goblin strongholds, mopping up some bandits, and sponsoring jousts and tourneys in various parts of Solamnia. Nothing the rabble likes more than to see grown men hammer on each other.
Parsalian looked grave, even alarmed.
I don't consider this good news, Antimodes. The knights have no love for us. If they stop at hunting goblins, that is one thing. But you can be certain that it will only be a matter of time before they add sorcerers to their list of enemies, as they did in the old days. Such is even written into the measure.
You should meet with Lord Gunther,
Antimodes suggested, and he was amused to see Parsalian's white eyebrows nearly shoot off his head.
No, I'm quite in earnest. I'm not suggesting you should invite him here, but
I should think not,
Parsalian said stiffly.
But you should make a trip to Solamnia. Visit him. Assure him that we have only the good of Solamnia in mind.
How can I assure him of that when he could point out, with considerable justification, that many in our order do not have the good of Solamnia in mind? The knights distrust magic. They distrust all of us. I must tell you that I'm not particularly inclined to trust them. It seems to me wise and prudent to keep out of their way, to do nothing to draw attention to ourselves.
Magus was the friend of Huma,
prodded Antimodes.
And if I recall the legend correctly, Huma was not greatly respected by his fellow knights, for that very reason.
Parsalian returned dryly.
What news of Thor Baden?
He changed subject abruptly, indicating the matter was closed. Antimodes was diplomatic enough not to continue to press the issue, but he decided privately that he would visit Solamnia, perhaps on the way back, though that would mean going a considerable distance out of his way to the north. He was as curious as a kender about the Solamnic knights, who had long been held in disrespect and even antipathy by people who once looked upon the knighthood as lawgivers and protectors. Now it appeared as if the knighthood was regaining something of its old standing. Antimodes was eager to see this for himself, eager to see if somehow he might be able to profit from it. He would not mention this junket to Parsalian, of course. The Black Robes were not the only members of the conclave to keep their doings secret.
The dwarves of Thorbarden are still in Thorbarden, we presume, mainly because no one has seen them leave. They are completely self-sufficient, with no reason to take any interest in the rest of the world. I really don't see why they should. The hill dwarves are expanding their territory, and many are starting to travel to other lands. Some are even taking up residence outside their mountain homelands.
Antimodes thought of the dwarf he'd met in Solace.
As to the gnomes, they are like the dwarves of Thorbarden, with one exception. We assume the gnomes still reside in Mount Nevermind, because no one has seen it explode yet. The Kender appear to be more prolific than ever. They go everywhere, see everything, steal most of it, misplace the rest, and are of no use whatsoever.
Oh, I think they are of use,
said Parsalian earnestly. He was known to be fond of Kender, mainly so, Antimodes always said sourly, because he remained isolated in his tower, and never had any dealings with them.
Kender are the true innocents of this world. They remind us that we spend a great deal of time and energy worrying about things that are really not very important.
Antimodes grunted.
And so when we expect to see you abandon your books, grab a hoopak, and take off down the road.
Parsalian smiled back.
Don't think I haven't considered it, my friend. I believe I would be a deft hand at hoopak flinging, if it came to that. I was quite skilled with a slingshot when I was a child. Ah, well, the evening grows long.
This was his signal to end the meeting.
Will I see you in the morning?
He asked with a faint anxiety which Antimodes understood.
I would not dream of interfering in your work, my friend,
he answered.
I will have a look through the artifacts and scrolls and the spell components, especially if you have some elven merchandise. There's one or two things I want to pick up, then I'll be on my way.
You are the one who would make a good kender,
said Antimodes, rising in his turn.
You never stay in one place long enough for the dust to settle on your shoes. Where do you go from here?
Oh, round and about,
Antimodes said lightly.
I'm in no hurry to return home. My brother is capable of running the business quite well without me, and I've made arrangements for my earnings to be invested, so that I make money even when I'm not there. Much easier and far more profitable than chanting spells over a lump of iron ore. Good night, my friend.
Good night and safe journeying,
Parsalian said, taking his friend by the hand and giving it a hearty shake. He paused a moment, tightened his grasp.
Be careful, Antimodes. I don't like the signs. I don't like the portents. The sun shines on us now, but I see the tips of dark wings casting long shadows. Continue sending me your reports. I highly value them.
I will be careful,
said Antimodes, a little troubled by his friend's earnest appeal. Antimodes was well aware that Parsalian had not told all that he knew. The head of the conclave was not only adept at seeing into the future, he was also known to be a favorite of Solinari, the god of white magic. Dark wings. What could he possibly mean by that? The queen of darkness, dear old Tachesis, gone but not forgotten, not dare forgotten by those who studied the past, by those who knew of what evil she was capable. Dark wings, vultures, eagles, symbols of war, griffins, pegasi, magical beasts, not seen much these days. Dragons? Paladine help us. All the more reason, Antimodes determined, why I should find out what's happening in Solamnia. He was heading out the door when Parsalian again stopped him.
That young pupil, the one of whom you spoke, what was his name?
It took Antimodes a moment to shift his thoughts to this different tack, another moment to try to remember.
Raceland Magir.
Parsalian made a note of it in his